All right, so our presenter is Jenny Lobb. She's a family and consumer sciences educator for OSU Extension in Franklin County. She has a bachelor's degree in human nutrition and a master's in public health, both from OSU. She's also registered and licensed as a dietitian in the state of Ohio. As an extension educator, she specializes in food, nutrition, and wellness, and enjoys teaching about healthy eating, active living, and using mindfulness to cope with stress. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jenny.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for joining me, whether you are, is the first time you've had a class with me or whether you're back after last week's class. Last week's class, which was an introduction to mindfulness, was recorded. So if you happen to miss that and you want to catch it, I believe it's on the library's YouTube channel. So you can look that up. You can share it with anyone who you think might benefit. And tonight we're going to really look more closely at breathing as a way to practice mindfulness. So we will be talking about how breathing can help with the mind-body connection, and I will unpack that phrase a little bit when we get there. And then we'll practice breathing mindfully, and I'll share some resources and strategies with you so that you can do some mindful breathing on your own. Before we go any farther tonight, we're going to do a little activity. This is called a breath count. So we'll do a breath count at the beginning, and then we will do a second one at the end. So I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds, and you don't have to make any changes to your breathing, but the idea is to just count the number of inhales for that 30 seconds. So an inhale and exhale, it counts as one, so you can just count the number of inhales during this 30-second stretch. So if we're ready, you can start in 3, 2, 1. That is time. So go ahead and stop and either jot down the number of inhales on a sheet of scrap paper or make a mental note, and we'll come back to that at the end of our session today. So if you were here last week, you may remember the definition of mindfulness that I shared. It comes from Jon Kabat-Zinn, who is kind of viewed as the pioneer of mindfulness in America. And he defines mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way. It's on purpose, it's in the present moment, and it's non-judgmentally. And there are some basic components of mindfulness that you may have picked up on if you were here last week. I didn't really talk about them explicitly, but in doing some mindfulness exercises together, you may have noticed some of these components. One of them is the breath, which is why we're spending a whole session talking just about breathing as a mindfulness exercise. Our breath is coming and going all the time. So it's a convenient way of paying attention. We can always bring our attention to that breath if we need a way to pause and focus on the present, because our breathing is always happening in the present. It goes with us everywhere, and it can serve as an anchor for our fleeting attention. It can also slow down our minds, and allow us to get in control if we feel like things are, getting out of control. We talked last week about some mindfulness analogies, and one of them was coming back to neutral Another one was leash training a puppy. And it's the same idea in both of those analogies. At those times when it feels like our thoughts are racing ahead of us, it's a way to come back to neutral or rein things back in and be in the present moment. Another component of mindfulness is body sensations, concentrating on how our body feels. In the body scan we did, there were some specific prompts to really, prompt you to notice some of those body sensations that perhaps we don't always pay attention to. And, feeling the sensation of your breath can be a way to practice mindfulness. Another basic concept is our thoughts. Often our thoughts, we may often feel like our thoughts control our reality, but they don't have to. We are not our thoughts, and we can redefine outcomes sometimes just by thinking differently. Although, I will say there's something to be said for learning to think about what is in our control versus what is outside of our control. And mindfulness can be a way to center yourself, come back to the present, and learn to do that. And one of the analogies last week was learning to surf, learning to stay on top of the waves. Things in life are always happening. The waves are always coming. And mindfulness is a way to learn to stay on top of those. And then a final mindfulness concept is emotions, learning to notice and feel and recognize those emotions. But today we're focusing on the breath, as I said, and I already brought up this concept once. In mindfulness, the breath is often viewed as an anchor. Mindful breathing can allow the breath to be the anchor between your mind and your body. We can use our breath as a reminder to focus, or even as a way to focus when our mind is busy jumping around. Maybe you've heard the phrase monkey mind. And even if you haven't heard that, you can, imagine what that brings to mind. If you think about monkey mind, thoughts swinging from the branches, kind of erratic, out of control. And using the breath is a way to anchor yourself. An anchor stops a boat from drifting aimlessly or getting tossed around in the storm. And in mindfulness, your breath can be an anchor that serves as that neutral point to bring you back into the present. And the great thing is we don't have to try to breathe. It just happens. So think of a time, if you will, when you were aware of your breathing. And if you'd like to share some examples in the chat, please feel free. As I said, we're always breathing, but we often don't think about that. It's just something that happens. There are some instances where we might be aware of our breathing, though. Maybe a time when your breathing was fast, you were gasping, if you were congested, maybe doing some sort of vigorous exercise or singing or playing an instrument where your breathing needs to be more intentional. I've heard swimming is often an example that comes up. Yeah, and maybe having a physical experience where you hyperventilated, running, crying so hard it was hard to catch your breath. Maybe it was actually calm breathing. Maybe you've had some experience with calm breathing and you were aware of your breathing. Maybe you've had the experience where you've had a head cold and thought, I will never take my breathing for granted once again. And, we may we may not take it for granted once we feel healthy again, but over time, it's just something that just happens and we really don't think about it anymore. So there are two types of breathing. Chest breathing uses the muscles in your upper chest. It tends to be this sort of breathing that's more shallow. It happens in situations where there's exertion, like sprinting or running, or during stressful situations. We talked last week about how you know when you're stressed, what sort of mental and physical signs, symptoms you experience, how your body lets you know that you're feeling stress. And for some, it may be more rapid breathing. So chest breathing happens sometimes, but it's really not meant to be our normal way of breathing. In fact, if your breathing is too shallow for too long, you may experience tighter muscles, especially in your neck and shoulders, or even headaches. And so stress can magnify those symptoms. If you're stressed, if your breathing is more shallow or rapid, you may experience some of those aches and pains. Breathing from our diaphragm, in contrast, is deeper. It uses the body's dominant breathing muscle, the diaphragm. And this type of breathing is more effective and efficient, but it can also lead to feelings of relaxation instead of tightness, especially when you're doing it purposefully. So if you're really trying to do some purposeful deep breathing, you may have been at the doctor's office and they ask you to take a deep breath. If you're in a situation where you're perhaps at home or you have the opportunity to relax, it can sometimes help to place a hand on your belly, and you should be able to feel it rise and fall. You're trying to fully fill your lungs with air. So you take a deep breath in, and as you inhale, you actually feel your lungs expand. That's, the rising of the belly. And then you feel it fall as you exhale and let all that air out. So the goal, if you're doing this sort of deep breathing for relaxation, is deep, even, slow breaths. You can use a count of, say, 4 or 5 to try to help slow the breathing, and focus on the breath or the count, but certainly adjust or stop if you start to feel lightheaded. And excuse me, the benefit of doing this, I already started to talk about how, chest breathing is often what we default to in stressful situations, whereas the deep breathing can be relaxing. This is how breathing is connected to the mind-body connection. So our respiration rate, our breathing, actually correlates with our well-being. So, when we are purposefully trying to slow our breathing, we're using our body to signal to our mind that it's okay to relax. So the breath can be linked to, the breath is linked to our nervous system, and regular breathing, deep breathing, can activate our parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us relax. It's associated with resting and a more peaceful mind and body. Some additional benefits of regular breathing practices are, it's a way to decrease stress, which is what we're really focused on when we're thinking about mindfulness. Mindfulness is a way to cope with stress. It's also been shown to help reduce pain and strengthen our immunity. So when we're thinking about mindful breathing, those components of that definition of mindfulness we shared were on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So that's how mindful breathing is done. Our purpose is to just watch or observe our breath. We're not trying to change it. We're just observing it. We're being intentional about, observing our breath. We're concentrating on the present moment and using that breath as an anchor to stay in the present moment. And when other thoughts come to mind, which is normal, it's normal even when you're trying to practice mindfulness, it's normal for our minds to wander. But you can always use that breath to think about the inhale and the exhale and come back to that. And then non-judgmentally. So the non-judgment part of mindful breathing is not to critique or judge our bodies or ourselves for the way that we're breathing. Picture a baby or a puppy or a kitten, when they breathe, we often watch their little bellies rise and fall and think it's cute. And so when we're watching our own breath, we can simply observe and not worry about, how it looks or how it feels. Just observe the breath in your nose, in your mouth, as well as in your chest and in your belly. And know that there's no right or wrong way to breathe. In fact, Jon Kabat-Zinn, who's the one who gave us this definition of mindfulness we keep coming back to, said, as long as you are breathing, there's more right with you than there is wrong, no matter how ill or hopeless you may feel. So a few additional tips are to, again, there's no right or wrong way. However, if you're trying to be more intentional about doing this, about starting a mindful breathing practice, it can help to breathe through your nose. Breathing through your nose can actually help filter and warm the air a little bit. Inhale into the entire lung, and then exhale all the way. And there are some short video demonstrations online to help you time your breath if you want a little bit of help or structure with this. One is just by using a expandable sphere, like this one I have here, and just as it expands, you breathe in and imagine your lungs filling with that air, and then exhaling as it collapses and breathing all of that out. So you could watch a little demonstration online to time your breath with that. Even just doing that for 30 to 60 seconds can help with that mind-body connection, just slowing your breathing rate a little bit. And then another one I had, linked here, the question came up last week. Someone asked about doing mindfulness practice when you have young kids at home, which can certainly be a challenge. And something I didn't mention at the time was, there is opportunity to do mindfulness practice with your kids or model it for your kids, and using breathing as an introductory activity can work really well. So there's a video on YouTube from Sesame Street about belly breathing, and it's really, meant to teach kids how to take a deep breath when they're feeling big emotions, whether it be excitement or disappointment or anger. So doing that mindful breathing can be a helpful practice for kids as well as adults. And there are I know there's at least one book on the book list that Jamie compiled that's about doing mindfulness practices with kids. So that's something to look into if you're interested. Back to mindful breathing. As you're practicing that, remember that you're not controlling your breathing, you're just watching or observing your breath. And it's okay if your mind wanders. That's normal. This may feel awkward at first, and that's okay. It's normal for our minds to wander, but you can use that image of an anchor to focus on your breath and bring yourself back to the present moment. There are some different techniques aside from the online videos that you could use to focus on your breath. One is using a breathing buddy, which is, it's great for kids, but it can work for anyone, putting a small stuffed animal or even a pillow on your belly and actually watching it rise and fall as you inhale and exhale, as your lungs fill, and then as you exhale. Lots of online resources and apps. And at the end of this slide set, again, I'll share the link to some mindfulness apps if you want to check those out. Star breathing is a nice technique. A star has 5 points, so you could visualize a star and work your way around the star and breathe in as you trace the star to 1 point and out. And breathe in and out as you're tracing that star. You can also use your hand and breathe in as you trace your hand. Each of the fingers, you breathe in and then you breathe out. And that's nice because our hands are always there. That's something you could use as a visual cue. If you're sitting, you can just, look down at your hands. You wouldn't even have to trace them necessarily, but use that as a cue to breathe in and out if you need something to help decompress or bring yourself back to the present. Another technique is square breathing, similar to the star. It's tracing the shape. You can also just do a count of 4. So you wouldn't even necessarily have to visualize or trace a square. You can just count the 4 as you inhale and then 4 as you exhale, and so on. At least 4 times around the square is the idea, but however long you want or need to do that. Another technique could be using anchor words. So choosing a word to repeat to yourself as you breathe in, and then a word to repeat as you're breathing out. So for some, that's an additional cue to help focus on the present rather than just watching the breath. Any other techniques that you have tried, please feel free to share those in the chat. There is just one more that I found recently, a few months ago. And again, this one is designed for kids, but it's another, kind of trace the shape sort of idea. So with rainbow breathing, you could either have a picture of a rainbow or you could visualize a rainbow. And the idea is you breathe in as you trace one color, and then breathe out as you move to the next line, and just work your way down the rainbow and then back up. I'll also share with you a website that comes from OSU, go.osu.edu/justbreathe. This is designed for OSU employees, but it is publicly available, so anyone can access this. And this is what the website looks like. So when you pull it up, it says sync your breathing with this, and you see the shape starts out flat. You see a shape appear, so you inhale as it grows, and then you exhale as it collapses. They have a more, there you go. There's a little bit more complex visual here. So if you need to slow your breathing any more, you could time it to this image of the tree. So you breathe in as you watch the tree grow. And then breathe out as you watch the leaves come off and it disappears. So at this point, we're going to return to our breath count. And again, I'll set the timer for 30 seconds. And again, you're just going to count your inhales for that 30-second stretch. So you can go ahead and start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, that is time. So what happened there? If you want to type in the chat, you can. Did your breath count increase, decrease, stayed the same from the start of this presentation to now? Was there any change? Oh, wow. So we have one person sharing half as many inhales the second time. Ideally, it should have gone down. Half is quite a difference. I'd say even, decreasing by 1 or 2 is an improvement. And this demonstrates that mind-body connection. So when we take time to breathe more purposefully, more deeply, it should be a way to help slow our breath and achieve the relaxation. It doesn't always happen. I see one person shared that they had faster breath. It doesn't always happen. But with more practice, the idea is that you can learn to use your breath as an anchor and as a mindfulness practice when you need to relax a little bit or when you need a way to cope with stress, because our breath is always with us. It's something we're always doing. So when we bring our attention to it, it can be a way to practice mindfulness anywhere, anytime. So last week, I encouraged you all to set a SMART goal for yourself related to mindfulness, and I'll do the same this week. This week, it might be specific to mindful breathing. So an example would be using an app for deep breathing 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week. You want to be specific in your goal. So instead of just saying, my goal is to practice mindfulness, specify exactly what you are going to try to do, and measurable, so you know whether or not you've achieved it. Attainable is going to be based on wherever you are right now. So if you're not currently practicing mindfulness, maybe just choosing to do a mindful breathing activity for 30 or 60 seconds a day, even just a couple times a week, could be a good start. Maybe 5 minutes a day, 5 days a week is attainable for you. Just depends on where you are now and what sort of time and resources you have to devote to this, and the realistic piece as well. If you are interested in using an app for mindfulness practice, you can visit that website, go.osu.edu/mindfulness apps, to learn about some different options that are available. Although there are, apps are one option, but there are also, websites and videos. There are mindfulness videos you can find on YouTube, as I shared a couple tonight. And also, I mentioned last week, and I'll share again, that OSU Integrative Medicine Center has some free recordings available on their website to practice mindfulness. And at least one of them is mindful awareness of breathing. So there are some specific to mindful breathing and some on different topics. But with that, I will stop sharing content for tonight, and I am happy to answer any questions that you have related to mindfulness or mindful breathing. Again, I will share the link to the book collection that Jamie compiled in the chat. So if you haven't had a chance to check out a book about mindfulness and you want to do a little bit more reading or self-study between now and our last session, if you want, feel free to check that out. And I'll also reshare the evaluation that Jamie put together for us. I do see someone raised their hand. So if you would like to unmute and ask a question at this time, you are certainly welcome to do that. And you can type in the chat your questions as well. So I do see, what amount of time do you recommend dedicating the breathing per day when starting out? And what is a good daily goal in the long term? So I would say when starting out, that's a kind of an assessment of what is going to be realistic for you. With any sort of goal setting, we would encourage you to set small steps and then build on your success as you meet those goals. So it could be, 60, it could be a minute, it could be 5 minutes. Excuse me. There is some research to show that mindfulness practice, not necessarily breathing, but just mindfulness practice in general of 15 to 20 minutes a day is kind of the sweet spot for the most health benefits. But that being said, any sort of practice is better than none at all. And I'll just share again, our final class is at the end of the month, March 29th, and the topic will be mindful eating. So we have the next few weeks off, but there'll be one final class on mindful eating as a mindfulness practice. So please feel free to join us for that one if you are interested and available, and it will be recorded as well if you're interested but not able to make it. I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to stop the recording at this time. And I'll just thank you again for attending, and hope to see you back at the end of the month.